Channel 13 presents Faculty Forum, a discussion of issues relating to the academic life of the college. The guest for today's program is Jill Gremmels, Wartburg College Librarian. Here's the program moderator, Grant Price.
Hello and welcome to Faculty Forum. Our mission today is to find out more about an important and exciting new chapter in the academic life of Wartburg College. That is the development of a library which meets the educational needs of students entering the next millennium, a learner's library. Our guest for this discussion is College Librarian Jill Gremmels, who will be providing most of the information. My colleagues on the panel are student media editors, Sarah Baker from the Trumpet, Jamie Eade from KWAR, and Justin DeVore from Channel 13. Justin has the first question for our guest.
Okay, Jill, real quick and easy question for you. Can you tell me the projected beginning date of this project, the projected completion date, and the total cost of the new library edition?
Mm-hmm. We are on target to break ground in May, and the construction time is not entirely sure yet because we're targeted to finish in December of '99, but if we should find a way to move out of the building and let the construction crew just have the place, then we could finish 5 months earlier, which would have a lot of benefits that for everybody, really. Projected cost is $8 million.
Okay. Jamie?
You mentioned that if you moved out of the current library, you could get the new one finished much easier. Mm-hmm. What are the plans for keeping the old library accessible to students during this period?
That's a really important question. I have called a lot of libraries who've done this process, and I have talked to one that basically shut the place down for a year and told the students go somewhere else. We will not do that. I pledge to you that you will have library service during the period of the construction. You may have to plan ahead a little bit. You may be slightly inconvenienced no matter what happens, but we will maintain services. In terms of more specifics at this point, I really don't have them because we're still exploring some options for moving out of the building.
We've heard a lot of discussion about the building itself. What about what's inside? Will the collection of books be expanded? Will we get more journals? Will we see an increase of the library's reading materials as well as everything else that's offered?
Our budget has increased significantly for the materials already. We'll spend over $250,000 this year on materials. And really, compared to a lot of colleges, we're in a very enviable position. Some places have to start out every year deciding what journals they're going to cut because inflation for journals runs 10 to 15% every year. So that means that a journal that costs the average of $147, which is the average cost for college journals these days, in year one will be $216 in year 5. And you multiply that by about 750 journals that we have total, and you can see that it really impacts what you're able to do. So in terms of, is there more money in the library building budget for materials? No, there's not. Has the college been pretty generous with increasing our materials budget in the last few years? Yes, they have.
Well, let's have Jill give us a tour of this marvelous new facility as it is envisioned by the architect and their sketch artists, and that's what we're beginning with. And this would be the front or the east elevation showing the new part of the building then, Jill.
Yes. You are standing here in the lawn between Luther Hall and the library to get some orientation here. This is the Fine Arts Center, and this is the skyway that then comes across what used to be 10th Street, is now 10th Street but will no longer be 10th Street, and makes the turn into the library here on the second floor. The part that, hope this shows up, the part that curves out here is the conditorei, or the coffee shop, and then there's 2 stories above that.
And the entrance will be then through this arcade that is at the front of
Yes.
the new extension, and
Yes.
that'll be a three-level building then.
That's correct.
Okay. Well then, we'll get this back up, but for now, let's take a look at what's inside, starting with what you're referring to as, and I guess which is, the ground floor.
Yes. The arcade here is the one that you saw on the elevation, and this is the conditorei, the part that sticks out into the lawn. This part and the lobby are at grade. That means they're at ground level. The rest of the floor is about 2 feet below ground level. That's one of the challenges of this renovation, is how do we deal with that? So what they have done is, from this lobby, there's a small stairway, about 2 steps, maybe 3, that takes you down into this area here. Or there's an elevator here that will be the main elevator for the whole building that will also take you down there. So the building is handicapped accessible in a way that it's not very well handled right now. This gate here is the security point for this floor and for the entire collection. The only way to get to any spot in here is through this entrance, okay? What we've done is put the entire collection on this floor. The books will be on the north end, the journals on the west side, and the curriculum wing is on the south end with room for stacks and a classroom for the education faculty to teach in, like they do now, only a better space. And there will be some reading and study areas up front here, and then a number of them along some of the other, I think actually this has been expanded in the next version of the plans, which we don't have yet. But
Could you orient us there to
Sure.
where the new building connects to the old building
yeah,
then,
thanks
Jill?
for asking. This is the outline of the old building here, okay? The addition is this long skinny part on the front. And you'll see that it goes a little bit to the north and farther to the south. That's so it can meet the skyway coming over from Fine Arts.
Okay, are you ready to go to the second floor? Shall we take the elevator or the stairs?
Either way.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Jill.
As you come up the elevator here or up the stairs, you'll find yourself in front of the service desk. And the goal with the service desk is that it will be a beacon of helpfulness. And even if you're standing here, we've actually tested this, even if you're standing here, you'll be able to see it. So it'll be very obvious where in this building you go for help. The staff area is arranged behind the service desk. And we have the whole staff together with librarians on the exterior for accessibility. And the idea then is that we've got our staff together in a very flexible space so that we can change the way we do things behind the scenes in ways that you don't care about, and but be very flexible for that, because libraries are changing a lot in the back room areas. Out here we have the reference collection, and then all over here is what we're calling the information laboratory. These are workstations so that students can take a project from start to finish. You can look for information, you can put it together in some kind of a package, you can create a multimedia project, you can do it all without having to get up and move around from lab to lab or even from workstation to workstation.
And that's a substantial amount of space and X number of workstations there.
Yeah, I know.
Well, it's fairly, there'll be a fair accessibility there for students, it looks as though.
Yeah, it would include all the workstations that we have downstairs in the library lab currently, plus all our workstations upstairs, and some more besides. So let me think a minute. That would be something on the order of 30 plus workstations. And these are arranged in a variety of ways. Here we have some that are very individual with walls so that you can hole up and work for a long time without interruption. But we also have workstations that are intended for 2 people to work collaboratively or 3 people to work collaboratively. And then we have some stations where there will be printers and scanners and other kinds of equipment that is shared among all the users of the lab.
And the faculty is going to learn?
The faculty has a center here too. The Center for Faculty Learning will be an evolving space. We're not entirely sure what that will turn out to be, but it's a place for faculty to model themselves as learners, for them to meet, congregate, a place where they can develop multimedia applications for their own classes. It's very difficult for faculty to do that in their offices because the phone's always ringing or somebody's knocking at the door or the colleague comes along with the good joke. And so they'll have a space where they can get away to hole up too, and a couple of conference rooms for small meetings there.
And this is where the arcade connects to Fine Arts? Then,
That's correct.
On that
It
level.
comes across here. And in fact, there's a second door to the library here so that we'll be able to have the Center for Faculty Learning open when the rest of the library is closed. Back here we have our 2 classrooms for information literacy. There'll be classrooms for 30 students apiece, very flexible seating. Those are individual tables and chairs so that we can recreate the room at a moment's notice.
Okay. Anything else about the first, this is the
This
first
is the
floor.
main floor, first
Yeah.
floor. The bathrooms will be in the same place on all 3 floors.
Plumbers will like that.
Well, and we like it too because that's not the case right now. So
Okay.
I think that'll do it.
All right. And now on to the upper level.
Okay. The upper level is almost entirely for students. As you come up the elevator, again, we'll get oriented. That lobby rotunda has been floored in, and there's a 12-person learning commons here. And that will be a very nice group space for a fairly substantial group. On the south wing, we have the quiet study area, holds about 50 people in a variety of kinds of seats. One of the goals of this project has been to accommodate many different styles of learners. Libraries have been really good at accommodating quiet learners who like very structured spaces, like Carol's. Unfortunately, that's not most of our students, and so those spaces are underutilized and other spaces are competed for. So what we're trying to do is have some Carols for people who like that, but also have more cozy seating, have tables, but it's blocked off so that it will be quiet, and I think students are going to be very good about self-policing that. Mm-hmm. Then there are lots and lots of group spaces over here. We've talked with a lot of students, and we're hearing we do more group work all the time. That's the kind of space that you need, and so we've tried to accommodate that here. Interestingly enough, when we talk to libraries, they say, we thought we had enough group rooms, but we didn't. And so we're putting in so many that I hope we have enough group rooms. And there'll be two different kinds. There are these formal sort of seminar kinds of rooms with conference-type tables and chairs and marker boards. And then there will be these more informal spaces that we're calling pods, where there'll be more casual seating. And again, trying to accommodate different types of learners and different size groups. Then the College Archives is back here, which will include the Archives of Broadcasting History in Iowa. There'll be a public area for that here with some playback equipment, and then a vault with a firewall here that will protect the materials.
Okay.
And I almost forgot the Pathways Center, and that's right in here. Includes advising, career development, counseling, writing center, supplemental instruction, and all of that is happening right here, just as you come off the elevator.
What it will be described then as the second floor.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, Sarah, I know you have some questions to ask.
Could you tell me a little bit more about the Pathway Center? That's a fairly new thing to be housed in the library. I think it was last year that it was moved there. Are we going to see it get any bigger? Is the writing center size going to increase? And also, I know there's a computer lab near the writing center in that Pathways area. Will there also be a computer lab?
Not with the Pathways Center. Okay. The computer lab will be that information lab that we talked about on the main floor. Pathways has a much larger space here. The plans are a little bit deceiving, but that space is actually over 2,100 square feet. And to give you some kind of a reference point there, I live in a big old farmhouse, two-story farmhouse. You have a picture in your mind now. That's about 2,300 square feet. So the Pathway Center is almost as large as my house. It would be much larger than a ranch-style house that you would see around here. What they're doing that's different is actually, and really I'm not the expert here, Vicki Edelant is, but they are bringing career development and the rest of it together in one spot instead of sort of spread around the one floor of the library as they are now. And then they're bringing Sharon Snyder and the counseling operation over from Old Main, because they have found in a year of operation that where they tend to refer is to counseling.
Okay. Jamie?
I've noticed in the plans for the library, the walkway is connected to the Fine Arts Center. Can you explain to me why Becker Hall of Science was not included in the walkway system?
It isn't included because they don't know yet what they're going to do with Becker. But there's a gatehouse, I hope that you noticed that, at the corner where the walkway makes the turn into the library. With that gatehouse, it will be possible to pivot to Becker in any direction that they might choose to go. If they build an addition off on the south side of it, on that wing, they can go there. If they come out from Vex, the walkway can go there. It's a perfect pivot point for anywhere they want to go.
In this ever constantly changing world of technology, how are you planning for that in technology besides the advent of not the advent, but besides putting the computer lab in there? And also one of the features that I like is that I can sit in my room in Grossman and order books through the library delivery service. Will that be continuing?
Absolutely. I'm glad you like it.
Okay.
Yes. Every space in the library will be accessible from the campus network, so that if you bring your own laptop or check out a laptop at the desk, you'll be able to plug in and do what you want to do. Plus then, the group rooms have, I believe, 2 ports per room, and then the information lab for people who don't have their own technology. And certainly from your room, you'll be able to continue to do all of those things and more besides, I hope. They've definitely seen swing in the time that you've been here, I think, from or toward more and more of our information being available through our webpage and through the network, and that will only continue.
Okay. Will there be anything connected through the ICN? Will you be maybe having a viewing lab there, or being able to connect to that, or utilizing the network satellite?
There are no plans for doing that right now, partly because those classrooms are our information literacy classrooms, and we are so busy now that we really need to have those dedicated for that purpose, but also because those are expensive facilities to build, and I think until we max out the one in the Classroom Technology Center, we're not sure about building another one in the library. However, once you've got the network going to this place, and you do, then once you have the conduit, then putting the wire in is not as big of a deal.
Joel, why don't you relate a little bit to how this is, it's pretty obvious, certainly in the physical layout, how it's different from a traditional library. But I'm sure the concepts that you're working here go well beyond how many computer stations we have and whether there's a coffee shop out in front.
Yes. We've talked about 3 elements in this building: learners, tools, and experts. And I think you have those 3 elements in a traditional library as well. It's just the difference in emphasis. A traditional library will emphasize tools. You can see that in our library. If you walk in now, you see the stacks in the middle of the space, and the people are sort of shoved out to the sides. We have carrels all the way around the edges where you can go, but it's obvious, to me anyway, that the tools, the books, occupy center space. In this library, and one of the English professors pointed that out when she saw the plans, I was really pleased that she caught it, was that we've put people at the center. Learners are at the center. Put the materials in a space where they are actually easier to get to because they're all together, but then leave the good space for people. And so we've tried to think of it not so much as a warehouse, which a traditional library would be, but more as a think tank. I really like that image of students and faculty and librarians working together, very intensely focused on information and on solving problems and talking to each other and working together and getting materials. A much different image than this mausoleum for all these books where we have some people that we call librarians who take care of the warehouse.
Then let me just relate a little bit to the fact that we started out conceptually originally with total new construction, and that has evolved into reuse of the existing building and adapting it to the new one. How comfortable are you with that?
Much more comfortable than I thought I'd be, to be honest with you. When we abandoned the plans for a new building and shifted our focus to a renovation and an addition, I was pretty skeptical. I was not sure that Engelbrecht Library was going to do what we needed it to do. It's already 2 buildings put together, one from 1958 and an addition from 1970, and I just didn't know. But this architect has done amazing things, and I am so excited about this building. It actually achieves the vision much better than the new building that was proposed before. It's more integrated. You have the staff together with the users instead of split apart by that main street that we saw before. We have space that's really for people and not so much for design. It's nice. And he has solved some problems in some really creative ways. The current balcony, which is just inaccessible, I mean, it's inaccessible from a wheelchair because the one ramp that's to it is so steep that you would be hurt if you went down that in anything wheeled. And the other access is stairs, which of course not everyone can handle. What he did with that, brilliant solution, very simple, he said, let's make it storage. Solution, and it was great. And he's been terrific to work with. So.
I guess the Waverly community is building their own library.
Yes.
How is Wartburg at all working with them? And I realize probably through interlibrary loan, they'll probably be working a lot together and be able to share materials. Are you working with them in any other way? Have you talked about that yet at all?
We have a close relationship with the public library. In fact, we share a staff member. Kathy Schaffenbuhl, who's new on our staff, also works at the public library, and that's been a very nice collaboration for us. We tend to collaborate with them more or less informally. We do have access to their catalog through a modem. They don't have access to ours yet because it's not web accessible, but it will be. Public libraries and academic libraries are very different. We have different missions, we have different clienteles, and so the best way for these two kinds of libraries to work together is helping each other out as we can. For instance, Wartburg students who are taking children's literature often go to the public library because, of course, they have a much bigger collection of children's literature than we do. Some of their patrons who need material that we have in our academic focus collection will come here, but that's the kind of thing that happens.
You mentioned that there's a shared staff member. Are there any plans to have any more staff members with the increased space in the library, more student workers?
I think we will need more student workers because we're going to have 2 service points, one at that entrance on the main floor and one at the service desk. And getting student workers isn't that difficult. We can usually add student workers when we need to. As for other staff, well, that's a challenge with the budget because, you know, if you spend money on that, then that's something else that you don't have the money for. I am hoping that we will have a full-time archivist. We're going to need a full-time archivist with the broadcasting archives.
Could you talk a little bit about the broadcasting archives?
I can try. Grant is probably the best person to talk about that.
Go ahead, Joe.
Well, Grant has pointed out to us that the history of broadcasting in Iowa has not been collected very well. There is one library that has handled the history of one particular station, but in general, material is being lost probably at an alarming rate. And so he has created an initiative to preserve that history, and we've decided to keep it in the library at Wartburg. So that the archive space, I was telling you how big the Pathways Center space is. This space is even larger. It's about 2,500 square feet, so it's bigger than my house. And much bigger than, well, much bigger than the archives that we currently have, which is 2 small rooms for the college's history. But the thing about archives is you don't get rid of that material. It only grows. And I think we are prepared for video material, artifacts, printed material, anything that we might collect. And how that's going to happen, I'm not just sure.
Well, I'll pick up on that. That's my cue, isn't it?
It is.
Basically, the concept has been, as Jill said, that there has been no comprehensive attempt to collect the history of this very important industry in Iowa, radio and television. And so with some support from the Iowa Broadcasters Association and with approval from the college administration, we have launched into the beginning of a collection that would reflect the history of broadcasting in Iowa, concentrating at this point pretty much on the oral component of it, doing interviews with individuals who have been very influential in the development of the industry and who will pass from the scene, as we all will, before too many more years go by. And then in addition to that, we are just now actively beginning to undertake the collection of what I refer to as artifacts, program materials, records, the sort of thing that gets into the nuts and bolts of the history of an industry that scholars are really interested in. Unfortunately, although we're an electronic medium, much of that early history doesn't exist because we tend to think of the electronic media as tape and graphics and computers. Well, we started out with some very crude vinyl recording devices, and there is very little actual program artifact material left, but there is some. And it's in basements and back rooms and transmitter rooms, and as Sarah said, it's precariously on the edge of being lost to history, especially with the changes that are taking place in ownership of media properties these days. So I personally am very grateful to the college and for Jill being our advocate on going ahead with this as a part of this new project, because I think it, over time, will be an important element, certainly, of this communication arts program, and I think the college overall. Now, you got more information than you really wanted, didn't you? Okay.
With the broadcasting history archives, how accessible will the library be to outsiders to Wartburg College?
We like to be accessible to anybody who wants to use us. We will probably do more and more of that through our webpage. Interestingly enough, this isn't really a digression, there's a little button on our webpage that says Ask Librarian. We were surprised that about 90% of the use of that is off campus. People who want to know something about the history of the college or a variety of other things, but who aren't students or faculty at the college. And so I would envision that we would create a webpage for the Iowa Broadcasting Archives and encourage people to come visit in person, or archives tend to do a lot of support by mail and by telephone too.
This library will be known as the Robert and Sally Vogel Library.
Yes.
And that acknowledges two wonderful people and the role they have played in not only bringing this about, but many other things here at the college. So that really was a significant decision by the trustees, wasn't it?
I think that's a lovely tribute.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's sort of go into that perspective and we'll leave the studio here for a few minutes now. Our production crew is going to take us out of the studio. The students in Professor Herrenstein's class have prepared a report which will give us some perspective on the thinking which went into this project and the fundraising effort which made it possible. The narrator is Aaron Sandquist.
The new addition to the Wartburg Library faces financial obstacles that must be overcome by fundraising strategies. Already, over half the $8.9 million for the project has been raised. Although a good start has been made, another $2 million is needed in order for groundbreaking to begin in May of 1998. So where will the rest of the money come from? According to Dr. Richard Torgerson, Vice President of Development, this money will come from a wide variety of sources.
All of the funding will come from alumni, parents, and friends of the college. I mean, and then foundations and corporations will also play a major role in this.
Both local and regional contributors have made generous donations to help make this new addition to the library a reality.
Right now we have commitments from the Board of Regents, from individual members of the Board of Regents that total $1.7 million. We have a $500,000 grant from the McElroy Trust in Waterloo, $200,000 from the Carver Trust in Muscatine, Iowa, $100,000 from John Deere, $300,000 from the Seaman Foundation. Those would be some of the major commitments that I can think of.
Included in the $8.9 million project is a $900,000 endowment. After the completion of the new addition, this endowment money will be used for maintenance and technology replacement for the next 5 to 7 years. Wartburg College President Robert Vogel shares his thoughts on the need for upgrading the library.
Almost 10 years ago, students began talking about the library and the need for vast improvements to meet their educational needs, faculty as well, so we've known that we needed to do something. And we've done a lot in terms of technology and accessibility and the resources available and the staff. There's a vast improvement in the library, but it's obvious that the library is not equal to the quality of school that Wartburg is.
Students need not worry about a tuition increase due to the fundraising efforts by the college. In fact, students should look forward to a new, user-friendly facility to bring together a collection of technology and experts.
It won't seem like an old library. It will, in fact, be a new library. The way things are gathered together, how you have access to that, the openness, the resources that will be available.
The decision to rename the Engelbrecht Library after Robert and Sally Vogel is to recognize the outstanding leadership they have provided the past 18 years. However, the Engelbrecht name will not be forgotten.
We will find a significant and an appropriate way to continue to recognize the Engelbrecht name.
The Vogels will be a continuing part of Wartburg's campus through the new name and addition to the library. How does President Vogel feel about this honor?
Flabbergasted, very surprised, a little embarrassed, and touched.
very well deserved. Everybody seems pretty confident that Rick and his troops will be able to get this job done before he departs for Minnesota, and you share that confidence, I take it.
I checked with him this morning, and he assured me we are on target.
Now, some ideas provoked maybe by the video that you'd like to follow up on?
Any further word on how Engelbrecht's name will be preserved in the library? Everybody said it's going to be done. I just wondered if you have any further ideas as to how.
The architect is working on that and will come to us with some suggestions. A number of ideas have been kicked around.
Might also be a fundraising opportunity, I would think, to be very crass about it.
Can you, I'm going to go right back in on the same question. Can you enlighten on some of the ideas that have been kicked around and that are...
One possibility that I've heard is to call it the Engelbrecht Collection, the book and journal collection that will be on that floor, on the lower floor. I think the curriculum wing might be a nice tribute to Engelbrecht, since he was the director of the normal school, which was a teacher training area. So, but we'll just have to see what they come up with.
Well, it's clearly an area that's going to get a lot of thought and consideration.
Oh, definitely.
And his name is not going to disappear from this resource on the college campus. Well, maybe we should just take a moment or two to sort out our thoughts here as we move into the second half of this discussion. So let's say we'll be back in about a minute.
I can't give you anything but love, baby. That's the only thing I've plenty of, baby.
If you're pregnant and you're still smoking, now you're smoking for 2. And that's 2 good reasons to quit.
I can't give you anything but love.
Yes, Commissioner. We'll be right there. Somebody needs our help. Quick, to the lamp poles.
From the maker of that commercial for the learned nature of this discussion. We are back to resume this faculty forum on the Robert and Sally Vogel Learners Library, which we hope will be taking shape on this campus next year. My guests in the studio are librarian Jill Vogel, Sarah Baker, Jamie Eade, and Justin DeVore. Before we get to that, however, let's find out how students and faculty feel about this addition to the academic life of the college, and our crew solicited some opinions.
I think the Wartburg College addition to the library is a good idea. I'm excited to see the plans and process. Hopefully it'll be before I graduate and get to use some of the benefits of the new library and the new facilities that need to be updated from the old one.
Really, it has to do with what the purpose of the library is. If it's simply a repository for books, then this thing will probably be fine for many years to come. We can keep dumping books in here probably for quite a long time. But if we really want to make the library into a place that is a center for learning, then I think that we're going to have some different types of spaces that this facility just can't provide. So I'm very excited about the new library project.
I'm looking forward to the new library because I hear they have a new coffee shop coming, and we're going to have a lot of new stuff, and it's really exciting.
I think the new library is a pretty good thing. I think we needed it for quite a while, and it'll be nice to get out and spread out and, have some good study space and stuff like that. On the other hand, cost. That's what I'm worried about, is maybe will it raise my bill? So, no new taxes.
There's a familiar phrase, Jill. No new taxes, no new taxes, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, as Dr. Torgerson pointed out in his interview, the cost of the construction will not be coming out of student fees. It will be raised by friends and alumni of the college. So, and in terms of annual ongoing support, I don't think anybody's anticipating huge increases. Certainly, we would be glad to have anything that comes our way.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
There's a major educational major on this campus. It's education and teachers. How are they being? I guess right now in the basement there is a large supply of children's books. Is there anything that will be done special with those? I guess I didn't see anything in there. Will that just be put in the normal curriculum? Will it have a special space for it, or?
That's that south wing, the curriculum wing, on that lower level.
Okay.
And there are two parts to that wing. There's the collection, which is the part that's closer to the entrance to the wing, so that people can get in there and use the materials even if there's a class. So it's a problem right now. If you want to use the materials and there's a class in that room, you feel like you're interfering with the class. And then there will be a classroom space on the south end of the south wing that the education faculty can use to teach in, as they do now. We've been consulting with Dr. Huth, Dr. Prusner, and Dr. Sherwood about that space so that we can have it set up the way that they will find most useful for teaching. Dr. Prusner would like to teach educational technology in there, and that means that we need some technology besides an overhead, which is all we've got in that space right now. So, yes, teacher candidates are definitely taken into consideration in the design of the building.
Well, let me take the discussion back to the concept of a new and different library for the 21st century. How is this connected to the concept of the information age and the internet and the World Wide Web, other than obviously we are going to be connected to it? But I guess what I'm asking is, how is that integrated into the process, and is it consistent with connecting to the more traditional ways of using a library?
There's a great deal of hype about the internet right now. We have had perfectly reasonable people tell us that we don't need to build a new library because we won't have any books printed anymore. Everything you need is going to be available on the internet. As somebody pointed out in a group I was with yesterday, they must be using a different internet than I am, because certainly everything most of us need is not there. As an example, I heard Senator Harkin in a press conference over the summer talk about the National Library of Medicine had put Medline available on the internet for everybody to use. And as an illustration, he cited some parents who might wake up in the middle of the night with a screaming child who has an earache. And they would get onto this National Library of Medicine site and take a look and look for earache remedies, and by golly, they'd find something and be able to take care of that child, and everybody'd get a good night's sleep and life would go on. Well, I tried it, and I didn't find any earache remedies there, because what they've got, what Medline is the database that doctors use to get to the journal literature of medicine. So it's an index like other indexes you use, but it does not have the full text of the articles. And even if it did, it's for doctors. So this is very technical medical information. I looked for earache remedies. There aren't any. That's not what doctors call it. They call it something else. I'm not even sure what. And so there were promises made that that site is not going to deliver. And I think that you see that a lot. For sustained reading of an argument that's going to go on and develop in some way, a book or a journal article is the best way to do it. And I think that's going to remain the case for a while. So what we need to do, if I can go on for a little bit longer here, is...
This is a fairly large subject.
Okay, is integrate all of this information. And then it seems to me what's absolutely critical is helping students to develop the information seeking and evaluating skills that they need in order to use this stuff wisely. No matter what you do in your life, you're going to need to find out about something you've never known about before, and you're going to need to separate the good information from the bad. The internet makes it a lot more possible, much more easy to disseminate both good and bad information. And a lot of what's on the internet, nobody's checked it, nobody has verified that it's quality information, and there's a lot of trash out there. There's a lot of stuff that simply is not true. And sometimes it's presented in a very glitzy package, and so if you aren't bringing your information evaluation skills to bear on it, you could be led astray. And so the focus of our program as a learner's library is to make sure that Wartburg students graduate from here with those abilities. I'm not as concerned about can they use Netscape to click on the right thing to get to the source that they want. Can they use Horizon to find the right book in the library? Sure, those are important things to be able to do, but those change very rapidly. The critical thinking skills that you will need throughout your life, that's where our emphasis is.
So will your staff then be trained to help students develop that? I know they've been very helpful when I've needed them. Is that we're going to see that continue?
Oh, of course. I mean, that's what it's all about. And in terms of the teaching that we do, that has quadrupled in the last few years. We were teaching about 20 sessions a year. I think last year did 90, so it's more than quadrupled. And that will continue. We have hired an information literacy librarian, Randall Schrader, whose main job is to do that kind of teaching. I'm involved also because I really love it and because that's what I think we're about. I hope that within the next few years we'll have even more staff support for information literacy.
Well, sort of spinning off your example about the earache line, which isn't there. Maybe it's because you didn't have an earache. If you had had one, it would.
I might have looked harder.
We worked harder at it. I listened to a report on NPR last night on All Things Considered, in which the Commissioner of Education in the state of Texas is promoting an idea to, instead of buying textbooks, he's going to buy everybody laptop computers. And we're all going to study out of computers off the screen. And this man was pretty serious about that. And that must be a fairly serious problem particularly for scholarship, isn't it? And in other ways too, I'm sure.
Well, it is in a lot of ways. I mean, the point that I was making before, that unlike a process of publishing a book where there are quality checks along the way, there is nothing with the internet information. You know, anybody can put up a web page. There's that. There's also the issue of the survival of the information. Students, I think maybe you have experienced this too, where you'll look at a web page one day, you might even print something off, you go back a week or so later and it's changed. The information is different or it's gone, and that can very easily happen. It's nice in one way because with his idea, instead of having a textbook that you can't update except by printing another edition of the textbook.
That's a good part of the idea.
That's the good part of it. Sure, you can update the information very quickly. That's one thing I like about Encyclopedia Britannica through the web that we now provide in addition to our print copy. You know, it can be updated daily if that's what the publisher wants to do. But then the problem on the other side is how do you check on somebody's source when what you see is not what they saw 2 weeks ago? Plus, there's the whole body of human information that's already been created that I don't think is going to be in digital form anytime soon. It costs a lot of money to do that, and who's going to pay for it? You know?
With the new library and also with the Wartburg plan being kind of revisited right now, will we see in the future actually classes being held, or as part of the Wartburg plan, you take a class on how to use the Wartburg library system?
I hope not. That answer might surprise you. There was a really influential article a couple of years ago by a couple of guys named Barr and Tagg, in which they talked about a teaching focus versus a learning focus. And they said, colleges have had this idea that our mission was to provide instruction. And so that means every time there's something else we want students to know, we figure, oh, well, we got to offer another class. Well, What they said instead is we should be focusing on producing learning by whatever means works. And I don't think that a class in how to use information in the library or any place is going to work, because I think student motivation isn't very high. It's higher when you have an actual need. That's when you want to know how to find and use information. So I think our goal is to continue to integrate that sort of instruction into classes that you're already taking. For instance, all the person and society classes come through the library. And we try to do a groundwork of information literacy then that we can build on in later classes. So my goal would be that as biology majors, you would have a plan that we would be providing information literacy instruction to you throughout your curriculum in biology, building on that basis from person and society, and the same in other majors as well, but not that we would have a separate class.
Do you find that students retain the information that is taught by Mr. Schrader?
Oh, you hurt me. No,
Well,
we don't, and it's frustrating to me. And anything you can help me understand about why that doesn't get retained, I would, you know. Is it the teaching methods? I don't really think so.
I think you've just got to use it.
I think so too.
You just you can learn it, but until you do it, well, Wartburg is living our learning.
Right.
So unless you put it into practice, often probably it'll escape you.
And we do get student testimonials of the sort that, I know you told me about overview finding and fact sources, and I really didn't pay much attention, but when I got into this big project and I went back and used an overview source, it really helped. I wish I'd thought about doing that sooner. So I think the method works, but you're right, we do have a problem with retention and transfer of that knowledge.
Let me turn it around a little bit here now. We've looked in detail at the plan, the architect's plans. We've talked about the concept. We've talked about the relationship between the new information age and the old idea of library as a warehouse. How do you students feel about what the college is putting on your plate here? Does it look like it's going to suit your needs?
I think it looks great. I think it looks so much more user-friendly. Just that initially you don't have to walk up all those stairs just to get into the library part. I think that just right off the bat, much nicer to use.
That's a really hostile entrance we have, isn't it? And it's even more hostile if you can't walk up the stairs.
I'm very excited about the focus on the group learning environments. I think right now it's this little boxy individual learning, and I think with not just the desk, but the tables and the more comfortable learning areas, that will make more students want to study in the library rather than in their rooms.
So do you think all those group spaces will be used? That's a question that I do get asked fairly often.
I do, because a lot of the classes I've been in have had several group projects, and
it's hard to find places to meet. Burr Lounge is too noisy, and you're not close enough to computer labs, and like you said, with the one station where you can do everything you need, I think that'll be really used.
I think I agree with you. I think that within about a half a year of this being up and done and ready and everything's set, that the library is going to become the new Burr Lounge. It's going to be the place to go to study. And I'm going to lead into my next question here. And with the coffee house, with the Conditorau there, it's going to be a place that students actually want to go. I guess now it's kind of seen as a place to study. The only worry I guess I have is it going to be too much of a student hangout rather than an actual learning center? And I guess I kind of touch on the why the Conditorau, why the coffee shop, and who's my biggest question right now is who's going to manage that?
And we don't know yet. Food service is very interested. Don Jewell has just been wonderful to work with on this. But we're looking at the possibility of outsourcing it as well, and trying to determine which would provide a better service and be financially more beneficial to the college. So I don't know who's going to manage it. We'll find out. Why the Conditorau? Because food and drink enhance collaboration and working together. And Augustana has one, Augustana Rock Island has one, and they have found that it has changed the quality of interaction in the library. I like to think about the Den being the place where people will go to chat and catch up on the latest news from campus, and the Conditorau in the library being where you go to have those sort of intense intellectual discussions that European cafes feature. Probably it's a little ambitious, but that's what we're hoping for. And I think that's part of how do we make it a center for learning and not just a student hangout. The Augustana Rock Island Library started out very intentionally to be the campus living room. That's not a model that I like. The think tank image is the one that I really want to go for. So that, as I said, that'll be a place where I hope faculty members will say, I'm going to hold my office hours on Tuesday in a pod up on the 3rd floor, there on the 2nd floor, and I hope that you all come in between 2 and 4, and that there will be that kind of discussion there. And that they might then say, oh, that's a really interesting problem and an interesting question. Let's go get a librarian to help us find some information about that. And that all of that stuff will be fostered in this space.
Physically, is it a fairly large space? It's the arch that sort of comes out at the front.
The Conditorei? It's about 1,100 square feet, I think. So half the size of my house.
We've just about used up your house. Right, so it's good size space.
We hope there will be about 40 seats in there. That's a better way to put it, probably.
Okay.
And in-house caffeination will be convenient.
Absolutely.
You won't have to wait for any reason.
And other sorts of beverages as well.
Physically with the library building, have you heard any plans for connecting the library to the PE complex? Anything like that? Is that a potential down the road?
That has not been mentioned much lately in my hearing. And there is not a convenient place in these plans for the Skyway to go out of the library and over to the PE center. You could do something like go around the back side. You're talking about a pretty long Skyway if you do that. So I'm not sure what they're planning with that.
We haven't, there are exterior elevations both to the south and north and east, and we don't have them here with us, but do you think that's going to be a pleasing aesthetic, or is it going to look kind of cobbled up when you stand out here on 10th Street and look north?
When you stand on 10th Street and look north, I think it's going to be pretty nice. My concern is if you stand near Becker Hall and look north, and you will see the 1958 structure, the 1970 structure, and the 1998 structure. And that's the part where I actually said to the architect, Charlie, that's ugly. And his answer was, we'll plant $100 worth of ivy and that'll take care of it. But maintenance doesn't like ivy, so I don't want to get anybody alarmed here. They have persuaded me sort of that if we put up enough trees and shrubs, and that with that very large, very magnificent structure of the addition, that you're really not going to pay much attention to it. We're not planning to do anything, though, to disguise the old parts of the building. Mostly it's a money issue. If we spend the money there, then we don't have it to spend someplace else. And I hope you agree that we'd rather spend it inside.
Can't have it both ways.
No, you can't. So
if you're going to have this solution, it has to be connected to the old building.
Right.
And the old building.
And you could do something cosmetic, but is that really the best, it's a bang for the buck issue with me. Is that the best thing we can do for students and faculty in this library? I don't think so.
Then could we sort of revisit a little bit the concept of how we get from here to there, Jill, and maybe sort of come back to nuts and bolts timetable. We're on track, so that means groundbreaking next spring?
What I'm hearing is May.
May.
Yes, and the addition will be the first part to be built whether or not we leave the building. And the architects told me last week that they think that will take about 4 months, which would give us the summer to do whatever it is we're going to do. Now, you'll quickly figure out that that means that the front entrance is not available. We do have a staff entrance on the south side, which is where we would bring people in. We've done that when they're waxing the floors and doing some things like that, so we know it works. If we can leave the building, we could finish as early as July of '99. And that would mean really that students are inconvenienced for just one academic year. If we have to stay in the building, then they're talking about December of '99. So that means a year and a half, assuming that the project finishes on schedule, and then assuming that we can get put back together by the time for winter term to start in 2000, which is pretty ambitious, I think. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to find a way to move out. But we have about 44,000 square feet in this building. There is no place on campus where a 44,000 square foot program can go. There's nowhere. We might be able to use a couple of spaces, But again, we're really in the exploratory phase. I think that would be the best solution if we can do it, but we're still trying to figure out if we can.
Opinion poll, students, which way should they go?
I guess my gut reaction is if it's only going to be 6 months longer, keep 6 months is 6 months. I mean, you're talking about a project that's going to be going on and it's going to need to be done right, and don't push it, do it right the first time. And if 6 months isn't going to make that much of a difference.
But it's not a do-it-right issue. I mean,
right.
It's
right.
It's what happens. You know, do you have to use Engelbrecht while the construction guys are making a lot of noise and drilling and pounding on things, or do we just get out and say, okay, the building is yours, do what you want with it?
I think that you need to stay in there.
Stay in, okay.
Because I don't think, as much as I would like it, and as much as a lot of students would probably like it, I don't think professors are going to say, well, I don't think we'll just stop all papers for a month.
In either case, you'd still have access. I promise you that.
Right.
While you're in the construction phase, you may as well see it through. If it takes that extra time, it's better to do it. You tack it on while you're already doing it, than come back later and say we need to do a little bit more. So
Interesting. This is not what I would have guessed you would say.
But I'm going to graduate in 99.
Which brings me to my point. As the only student of the three of us that will be here during that time, I'm very concerned about this. And I guess I would like to see it stay on campus so it's accessible to the students, but is it serving the needs of the library? Is it, the journals and things need to be accessible to the students, and it also needs to be a quiet learning area, and I don't think that is best served by the construction. So it's kind of, which is the lesser evil?
I guess it's short run versus long run benefits.
Yeah.
In the short run, it would be an inconvenience, but in the long run, it's sure going to be nice when it's done.
Well, yes, and there will be some inconvenience any way we do it, but I do promise you that your needs are most important in this process.
But it is, assuming that obviously there's not one space, but proper spaces could be located. You could tie in the technology and actually have an operational library in possibly 2 other locations for the interim.
I think so. I mean, that's what we're trying to figure out. But what makes it possible, I think, is that we already provide many of our indexes through the campus network and could continue to do so. And we already have a delivery service in place so that you could conceivably get what you need without visiting the library very much. Now, we would miss you, but we know you'll come back after we get the new building done.
So are we going to continue to buy books ad infinitum as we enter this wonderful information age of the 21st century?
Ad infinitum is a really long time. More books are being published now than have ever been in the history of the world. We continue to buy books, and we will continue to buy books.
It's still a library.
Well, and the book is still a useful format.
Again, I'm really interested in I mean, I know I'm a terrible user of electronic technology, but it's sort of your home already. Are you resolved to the idea that we're still going to need books, Jamie?
I really think that we do need books. In a lot of my classes, if we need to do research projects, we're limited to only one online source. And in my experiences, for instance, last night I was looking at something on the internet and I found so many discrepancies in a fact. And I think that, from, like as you said, there's double checks on published material, and I think that's very, very interesting.
There's a lot of power in the printed page. I think that TV was supposed to kill newspapers and radio, and there's been talk that the new internet age is going to kill newspapers. I don't believe that. I think that there's a lot to be said for a tangible, reliable thing to study with, hold on to.
That's a good point, I think, that technology has tended to add to your options, not replace options.
The one thing that I would say is until the internet becomes as reliable as the printed page, then we need the books. But I think soon something's going to happen where the internet is going to be checked by some source. I think it's going to be stamped by some agency. It won't necessarily be censorship, but it'll say this is a credible source, and it will be just as credible as any printed page. And glad to see that the technology in the library is focusing on the future and not just what we have now. I mean, it's focusing on, you're laying the conduit, you're thinking ahead, and
Absolutely.
I'm glad about that, and
Thanks.
and to see that everything is, for technology-wise, sound.
But we're also looking back, and the library is a repository for history, and that's what the archival section is about. And
Trying to do it
so
all.
We're grateful for that. Well, Jill, we're very grateful for you for bringing, I think, some real insight to this subject and
Thank you.
a lot
It's
of
been a
new
pleasure.
information. And thank you for joining us. Thank you to Sarah Baker and Jamie Eade and Justin DeVore for joining me. And thank you for being with us on Faculty Forum today.
Faculty Forum on the new Wartburg Library has been a production of the Communication Arts Television Production class. Today's guest was College Librarian Jill Gremmels. Members of the student media panel were Sarah Baker, Jamie Eade, and Justin DeVore. The program moderator has been Grant Price.